Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Shri Gaura Hari ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. So today is a very, very auspicious day. Today we honor the disappearance anniversary of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada. Just some invocation. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this morning I will attempt to glorify and say something on this most wondrous personality from our lineage. I ask all the blessings of the Vaishnavas that I may be able to, I don't know if I'll adequately glorify him, but some small glorification in his honor to please Srila Prabhupada. So we'll just begin with the pranam mantras, or the mantras of glorification to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Goswami. If you know the mantra, you're welcome to say it with me. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Iti Namine. I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, who is very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at his lotus feet. Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayine Prabhave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances to Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Dayitaya Das, another name of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, who is favored by Srimati Radharani and who is the ocean of transcendental mercy and the deliverer of the science of Krishna. Madhurya Ujjvala Premadya Shri Rupanubha Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, the personified energy of Sri Chaitanya's mercy, who delivers devotional service which is enriched with the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna, coming exactly in the line of revelation of Sri Rupa Goswami. Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudhapa Siddhanta Dvantaharine. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are the personified teachings of Lord Chaitanya. You are the deliverer of the fallen souls. You do not tolerate any statement which is against the teachings of devotional service enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami. Often when speaking about his spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada would sometimes say, "What can I say about my guru? He was a Vaikuntha man." In essence, he was a Vaikuntha man. And we can see from his pranam mantras the obeisances we offer to him as the personification of the teachings of our lineage, of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And there's one letter Srila Prabhupada wrote in September 1966, when he first came to America, and just before he had established ISKCON, and when he was still in those very, very early days, he was writing to many of his god brothers, as you know, to ask them for help. Send me 2 or 3 of your men. You've got so many men in your Gaudiya Math. Send a few. Let them help me. Send me some books. Send me mridanga. Send me kartals. He was asking for this help. And he was also writing to Narayan Maharaj. And in one letter to Narayan Maharaj, he's describing his spiritual master. And Srila Prabhupada says that it was in the first meeting with my spiritual master that I actually learned how to love. And I thought that was very interesting because when you look at the character of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, I don't know, for me, love is not a word I would associate with. It's not like the first word I would associate with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. We know him as the lion guru, the Simha guru, for his very philosophical, scriptural nature, for someone who would just, cut to shreds any misconception you had, very heavy. So when I thought about this, I said, love, that's not something I completely understand, but okay, we'll see where it goes. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks to Arjuna, and he says that whenever there is a rise in irreligion, that he comes, when there is the miscreants, to annihilate the miscreants, to protect the devotees. Krishna says that he comes millennium after the millennium, that he descends. And we know from the example of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are so many incarnations of Krishna, and he comes for so many different purposes. And in this age, we know Lord Chaitanya has come to give us the mercy of the holy name and to save us in this way. And then along with Lord Chaitanya always comes his associates. Krishna never comes alone. It would be pretty lonely if he came. He comes with his paraphernalia, his assistants, his associates. So we know from the example of the Chaitanya Charitamrita that Lord Chaitanya came, then the 6 Goswamis came, and he gave them certain instructions to live in the holy places, to write the scriptures, to excavate the holy land and restore it to its former glory, right? From the 6 Goswamis, we know then came, Narottam Das Thakur, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev Vidyabhushan, so on and so forth. But with time, then we reached what's like a kind of a dark age in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, where with time the purity of our lineage dwindled somewhat. The 4 principles were broken, and actually with time it was considered that if you broke the 4 principles, meaning if you engaged in illicit sex and imitated the intimate pastimes of Krishna, if you were intoxicated, if you ate whatever you liked, then actually you were a Vaishnava. With time, that's what happened. And it was actually a very dark time, the principles of Gaudiya Vaishnavism was so degraded that the word Vaishnavi, like female Vaishnav, Vaishnavi was used as a synonym. Synonym means a similar word for prostitute. That's what happened to our lineage. It was a very, very dark time. The principles became so diluted, and these different groups or these deviant sects came up, sects. If you're familiar, they call the Apa Sampradayas. Where a Sampradaya means a bona fide lineage, Apa Sampradaya, an unbona fide lineage. So all of these different lineages started popping up and using and cheapening the principles of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And they would say, whatever you want to practice, it's fine. It's Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Another group would say, no, you should just follow your mind. Your mind is your best friend. Whatever concoction, whatever comes up in your mind, that's okay, right? Follow your mind. It's the best teacher. And then from this, there were still some very genuine saints, but they were very few and far between. And they were individual, And through all of this came Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the father of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And he laid for us the foundation of Gaudiya Vaishnavism as it is today, right? He wrote over 100 books. He wrote countless songs. And he was the first person in our lineage to preach in English, right? He wrote that famous book, Lord Chaitanya, His Life and Precepts, and he sent it to England, He started preaching and speaking in English. And he prayed to the Lord, and he said, that there is so much of darkness, of ignorance over the family of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. We need a sun to dissipate this darkness. But he prayed to the Lord, I don't need the whole sun, I just need one ray of Vishnu. And he prayed like this, I just need one ray of your mercy. I don't need the whole sun. It's okay. And through that came Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, we know as the ray of Vishnu. He appeared in the year 1874. I know today is his disappearance, but we'll just touch on a few points from his appearance and throughout his life. And when he appeared, obviously it's very common in those days, you do the astrological chart of the child to understand what their life will be like. And his chart displayed all of the qualities of an exalted personality. There are 32 qualities. And there is no chart that displays these qualities in full, except for him. These qualities, their eyes must be a certain shape, their fingertips must be a certain shape, the size of their navel, their lips, there's all of these descriptions. Their personality must be very grave. Their voice must be, must roar like a lion, all of these things. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had all of these qualities in his chart. We know that for those of us who have Brahman, or the men who have Brahman initiation, they wear a Brahman thread, and their thread is wrapped around their neck as a sign of being a Brahman. When Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was born, his umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck, like the sign. So there's further confirmation that here's a true Brahmana, a true Vaishnava. There's that famous story when he was 4 years old, his father had a little Shaligram Shila he would worship. And his father bought mangoes to offer the Shaligram Shila. And this little 4-year-old Bimal Prasad was his name. He ate the mango before it was offered because he wanted to eat the mango. And his father chastised him. Don't you know this is boga, that we cannot enjoy anything that the Lord hasn't enjoyed first. This is an offense. And Bimal Prasad was so affected by the fact that, I've eaten something that the Lord hasn't enjoyed as yet, that he took a vow, I will never eat mangoes ever again because I'm an offender, I've sinned. And yes, for his whole life he never ate another mango again. And even when someone would bring it to him, he said, I can't even look at this mango because I've committed an offense. I've enjoyed something separately from the Lord. By the age of 7, he had mastered mathematics, astrology, and astronomy. By the age of 10, I think 7 or 10 as well, he knew the entire Bhagavad Gita by heart, and not just like recitation. He could give a commentary on each and every verse by that age. By the age of 10, he was proofreading Sanskrit works by scholars. And at the age of 15, that's when he received an honorary title, Siddhanta Sarasvati, because he had written a commentary on a book of astronomy called the Surya Siddhanta, which was a very comprehensive book on the planets and the constellations and all of these things. So in honor of that work, he received this honorary title, Siddhanta Sarasvati. And his father, Bhaktivinoda, taught him how to proofread. He was proofreading his own father's books by the age of 10. Amazing, right? And on this, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta made the comment that my father, he didn't just teach me how to proofread writing, but he taught me how to proofread the writer, as well. That if what this person is writing doesn't 100% match up to the teachings of the Acharyas, to what Srila Rupa Goswami is saying, if it is off by one tiny degree, then it is wrong. Right? Nothing but the absolute truth is good enough, right? Not even a fraction different. And in his own astrological sign, one of his ascent sign, it's one of the different signs in the houses, is Cancer. Cancer is the crab, right? So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would say that in my proofreading, I am a Cancer. So I must proofread, and I must pull apart, I must pinch, I must dissect what it is that I'm proofreading. Because if you are writing something, it should only present Krishna consciousness. Nothing else, not your own interests, nothing else. Then it is not pure in any way. At the age of 16, he started in his schooling environment, he started a club or a little group amongst the men in his college for lifelong celibacy. Needless to say, he was the only one by the end who managed that. He was a lifelong celibate. And at the age of 26 is when he met his spiritual master, Srila Gaura Kishore Das Babaji. And that is a very, externally, it's a very interesting relationship, because externally, if you compare Srila Gaura Kishore Das Babaji and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, they are the complete opposite of each other. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is this erudite scholar, this philosopher, this theologian, this astrologer, he had an eidetic memory, means that once he read something, he would never forget it, By the end, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta could remember word for word something he had read 50 years ago. Such a memory he had. And in comparison, Srila Gaura Kishore Das Babaji was illiterate. He couldn't even write his own name, right? He was a Babaji, he didn't really engage with the world. He just stayed in Navadvip. He wouldn't even go to Calcutta. He had bad eyesight to, fix his eyes, to get glasses. Because he said, no, Calcutta is Maya. I can't engage. I don't want to go to the material world, And this comparison is so interesting. Externally, they are the total opposite of each other. And once, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was in Bangladesh, he was traveling by boat, and someone was asking him about this. That you and your spiritual master, you are so different. You, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, you are what we call a Goshtianandi. Means you don't stay in one place. You go out and you preach. And your spiritual master is like a Bhajananandi. He just stays in one space. He chants his japa, and he's very internal like that. You are so different. It seems like you have such a different way of life. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, no, actually, you have misunderstood, because there's actually no difference between my purpose and my intention. It's exactly the same as my spiritual master. And he gave an example. See this boat that we're traveling on now, right? The engine has so many parts to it. And the engine is powered by one tiny little battery. And you don't see the battery, right? It's very small, it's very silent, but it's the source of energy for the engine. If there's no battery, nothing's going to work. So similarly, my spiritual master may be sitting and chanting in Navadvip, and maybe he didn't mix with the public, but he is the battery for my activities, and without him, I am nothing in this way. We know he took a very famous vow to chant 1 billion names of the Lord. That means 300,000 names a day. That's like, I think the maths is like 3 times 64 rounds every single day, something like that. And it took him just under 10 years, 9 years, some few months. I mean, that's a good way to weed out someone who's an imitator, right? Ask them to chant for 9 years straight, every single day, no matter what, 64 times 3 rounds every day. And it's very interesting, no matter what, I mean, for those of you who've been to India, you know how hot the summer gets. So he was in Mayapur and he was chanting in his hut, and he would close the door to chant so he wouldn't get disturbed. When it was raining, he wouldn't move, and it's a thatch roof, so the water is like the rain is dripping through. He'd just open his umbrella and chant, and he wouldn't move, right? And it's not actually, I was reading this book, it's called Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav. It's a 3-part series on the life of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And during this time, you would think, okay, if you're going to take a vow, you're just going to do your vow and nothing else, because who has time for anything? Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. But actually, no, during that time, he chanted all of those rounds. He managed the temple of the Yoga Peeth that his father had built. He spoke to people and guests who came to see him. He even went out for little preaching initiatives, and he continued to write and read and study. It was during this time, when he was chanting 1 billion names, that he wrote his commentary on the Chaitanya Charitamrita that Srila Prabhupada uses. If you read Prabhupada's Chaitanya Charitamrita and the purports, he says, in the Anubhasya commentary of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he wrote it during this time. So he didn't just chant, he did everything else, and he did that on top of that. So if someone says, they don't have time to help you, you can think about this example, right? And in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Prabhupada says in one of the purports, he's speaking about an acharya. And Prabhupada says that an acharya who comes for the service of the Lord cannot be expected to conform to a stereotype, for he must find the ways and means by which Krishna consciousness must be spread. So the acharya is not just the regular sadhu, right? Whatever ways and means they can find to spread the mission of Lord Chaitanya, they will do it. And you can see in Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's time how revolutionary he was in his approach to preaching. In one of the Appearance Day lectures that Srila Prabhupada gave for his spiritual master, he says that this Krishna consciousness movement means to become a Vaishnava and to feel for the suffering of humanity. So to feel for the suffering of humanity, there are different angles of vision. Someone is thinking of the suffering of humanity from the bodily concept of life. Someone is trying to open a hospital to give relief to the diseased. Someone is trying to distribute food in a poverty-stricken country. These things are certainly very nice, but actual suffering of humanity is due to a lack of Krishna consciousness. My Guru Maharaj was paradukkha dukhi, distressed to see the suffering of others. And I was thinking this is actually the love that Srila Prabhupada was speaking about in his first meeting, that in my first meeting of my spiritual master is when I learned how to love. Because this is genuine love on a completely selfless platform, that I am distressed to see that you are suffering, so I need to do something for your greatest good. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta actually embodied this compassion, and that's what speared on the ferocity of his preaching, because he was distressed to see that the people at large were suffering and they had no relationship with Krishna. And throughout his life, he preached in this way very, very fiercely. And towards the end, he started speaking about, his imminent departure. He would start mentioning it, this and that. And we know that in 1935, there's that conversation where Srila Prabhupada and his spiritual master in Radhakund, when they were in Parikram, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was just sharing, his, I would say maybe his dissatisfaction with his disciples in some way, that, they had bought now this marble temple in Bagh Bazaar after many, many years. And he would say that, maybe we were happier in the beginning when we were just renting in Ultadanga Road. We had a very small place, we paid our rent, everyone had one tiny room, and we were happier. Now we have this marble temple, and everyone is fighting over which room they want for themselves. Over all of these trivial things. And he told Srila Prabhupada that better maybe I strip the marble off the walls, I sell it, and I print books. That's what he wanted, ultimately. And Srila Prabhupada also mentioned that his spiritual master prematurely left the world because he was dissatisfied and disappointed with what was happening. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta himself also said that I'm leaving 10 years before I should be. Right? Because Srila Prabhupada used the word disgusted, that he was disgusted with what was happening in the Gaudiya Math now. But, when we think of this word disgusted, it's not like how we would understand it as an outright rejection of his disciples. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was paradukkha dukhi. So his disgust was actually his spiritual concern for what was happening in the Gaudiya Math, right? Because if you read, read this biography, he had a lot of good things to say about his disciples because they supported his preaching. They did a lot. He had many, many wonderful things to say about his disciples, but towards the end, he was tired, right? So it was actually his genuine concern for the spiritual well-being of his disciples. So towards the last year, he externally had some heart issues. He had a heart attack or some health concerns regarding his heart. And then when his health started declining in this way, one of his disciples asked him, who will be the next acharya of the Gaudiya Math? And he gave no answer. And he said there won't be, and you cannot name an acharya. The acharya manifests by their own mercy. But what he did ask, which we know didn't happen, is that he wanted them to create a governing body commission. The GBC is what he actually wanted for how the Gaudiya Math to continue. But they didn't do that. And actually Srila Prabhupada says, and he attributes the success of ISKCON to him following that instruction, that cent per cent, my spiritual master wanted a unified preaching mission, and I followed that instruction, where my godbrothers didn't. And we can see how the Gaudiya Math then broke up into so many different factions because everyone was fighting for the position of Acharya in the end, right? And in his last few days, he had a bit of a fever, externally. He had a bit of a fever, and his disciples were bringing the doctors, the best doctors that there were at the time, to see him. And the doctor would come, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would just brush them aside, and he would say, "Why are you bothering me? Just chant Harinam. Just sit here," he would tell the doctor, "just sit here, just chant Harinam. Don't bother me." And what I'll just read here is on the 23rd of December. This is 8 days before leaving. He gathered everyone who was there, all of the disciples, into his room, and he instructed all of them. And this is what is known as his very last address, I guess, to the world. And his disciple, obviously, they noted it down. So this is his, I thought, fitting. It's the Disappearance Day. His last address. "I have upset many persons' minds. Many might have considered me their enemy because I was obliged to speak the plain truth of service and devotion towards the absolute Godhead. I have given them all these troubles only so that they may turn their face towards the personality of Godhead without any desire for gain and with unalloyed devotion. Surely someday they will be able to understand this. All of you propagate the message of Rupa Raghunath with supreme enthusiasm. Our ultimate desire is to become dust at the lotus feet of the Rupanugas. All of us should remain united for the sake of service. In this current sphere, you should live somehow or other only for Hari Bhajan. In spite of all danger, criticism, and discomfort, do not give up Hari Bhajan. Don't be disappointed that most people in the world do not accept the topics of unduplicitous Krishna Seva. And do not forsake your own bhajan of Krishna Katha, Shravana, and Kirtana, which is your all and all. With humility like a straw and forbearance like a tree, you should always perform Hari Kirtan. Let our bodies, which are like those of an aged ox, be offered into the Sankirtan Yagya of Lord Chaitanya and his associates. We do not aspire to be any kind of hero of karma or dharma, but our constitutional position and all in every birth is to become dust at Sri Rupa Raghunath's lotus feet. The Bhakti Vinod Dhara will never stop. The Bhakti Vinod Dhara means the family, the lineage of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. With all your energy, devote yourself to fulfilling the desire of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. There are many among you who are well qualified and able-bodied. We have no other wish whatsoever. That's just a part of the address. But again, even right towards the end, just pushing on that, we're not here to become heroes and saviors or anything like that. We're actually just here to serve Sri Rupa and Sri Raghunath and the Goswamis and Lord Chaitanya and our lineage. Nothing else but that. And then he departed physically from this world. It was the 1st of December 1936, I think, around 5:30 in the morning. And the moment he departed, actually, all of the clocks in the Gaudiya Math just stopped at that point. Right? If I remember what I read, he departed in Jagannath Puri, I think. So his body was taken to Mayapur, where his samadhi is, and he was placed in samadhi there. And when he passed, actually, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was such an illustrious saint that his departure, the entire day, it was just broadcast all over the radio that this great saint has departed. And especially in Bengal, it was marked as an official day of mourning that we have lost this saint, right? And when speaking about the disappearance, Srila Prabhupada said that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati came to this world to execute the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he executed it. And when it was required, he left the place and went to another place to do the same business. Simple, right? So for us as members of ISKCON, Gaudiya Vaishnavas, followers of Srila Prabhupada, why is this day, the appearance and disappearance of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, so extremely important for us? Yes, because he is the guru of our founder Acharya, but because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was the first person who organized an institutional preaching mission for Lord Chaitanya. And we really don't understand how much that means for us. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he laid the intellectual foundation for Krishna consciousness in the modern world. And he very strongly preached that, yes, bhakti is different from what these sahajiyas are presenting to you, right? And what they are doing. For us, yes, the 6 Goswamis, they came, but they stayed in one place. They slept under a different tree every night. They wrote all of their commentaries. And for generations after them, there were so many imitators who came. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came and he placed himself within the middle of all of this chaos. And he said, I'm going to preach nothing but the absolute truth. Prior to this, if you wanted to follow Gaudiya Vaishnavism, you had to go to Vrindavan or the village somewhere far away. You had to find a guru who was living in this village, who just had a few disciples, and you had to learn from him, But here what we see, the Gaudiya Math that he created, it presented, such an organized system all across India, that anyone and everyone could come and just engage in something for their spiritual growth, right? Prior, all of the sadhus who were there, they were just individuals on their own. But now you had a powerhouse of an institution that used all of the amenities and technologies of the modern world to preach, no matter what, right? And Srila Prabhupada even writes in the Nectar of Devotion, and he says that it is difficult for us to understand the enormity of the battle that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati fought for us, for the right for any deserving person to be considered a Brahmin. Because in Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's time, one of the biggest fights he fought was against the caste Brahmin system, that you have to be born in a Brahmin family to be considered a Brahmana, right? He spent the majority of his life challenging this, and to the extent where his life was threatened many times, right? Many of his opposition, they tried to pay the police off to kill him. During one of his Vyasa pujas, they set the Gaudiya Math on fire, trying to kill him. When he went on parikram with his disciples, us when we go to the dham and we go on parikram, Vrajmandal parikram, everything is so organized, there's prasadam, it's a wonderful experience. When he went on parikram, they were stoned by the people. People would throw garbage on them, shut the door in their face. And not like he had Western disciples, he had Indian Indian body disciples. But this is what they faced, At some point, that for those of you who have watched Abhay Charan, right, there's that famous part about where they're on parikram and they're attacked. So he and his disciple exchange clothes because they want to come and kill Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. It was, I think in that one, they were attacked by these dacoits, right, that were paid off, and they were attacked by, not stones, something called a brick bat. I didn't know what a brick bat was, so I had to do some searching. So it's basically you take a brick and you smash it into all of these pieces, like these sharp pieces, and you put it in a stocking, and you swing it around like a club, and you just hit everyone. So already that's hard, and then you got all of these sharp pieces in it that are just going to cut you. So his disciples were beaten with this, right? Just for going against the caste Brahmin system, right? And sometimes, when that happened, actually that particular incident kind of marked the end of the smarter caste system, because that was now published all over the newspapers, how they actually paid someone off and attempted to kill Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, no, I won't press charges, it's okay, it's because of them the Gaudiya Math is famous, we're now in the newspaper, so I'll take it as preaching in that way, it's okay, right? But he was such an amazing, ferocious lion-like preacher that sometimes even his own disciples were afraid to bring guests to see him, right? Because you never know what he'd say in that way, right? And, sometimes these young boys would join the Gaudiya Math and their parents would come looking for them to take them. He would hide all of the brahmacharis under his bed because he felt that if anyone wanted the opportunity to practice spiritual life, he would give it to them. No matter what he would do. He would make sure they have the facility. The Gaudiya Math in his time had 64 branches all over India. It went all the way from South India at the bottom. He traveled all the way to Cambodia, Asia, in his preaching. You know, at the height, they had about 4 to 5 printing presses at that time. You can just imagine how much of literature Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was producing, to have 4 to 5 literatures, and not just like monthly, like publications, a daily publication. Every single day they printed a newspaper, the Nadia Prakash, with something. I mean, if I would run out of things to say very, very quickly. No, 4 to 5 printing presses, daily, weekly, monthly, annual publications. Imagine, right? So please understand how powerful the Gaudiya Math was in the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and why Srila Prabhupada was in so much of despair when it broke, right? It's a very powerful thing that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta established in his time. And also you can understand why Srila Prabhupada himself was so fired up, because of the example of his spiritual master. And there's a few things I'll just read from this book. Just highlighting, I found some very beautiful passages. I won't read all of them because of time. But if I go over, it's fine. There's no breakfast today. We're fasting. Just very beautiful passages just about the qualities and character of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Maybe things that we don't think about, you know. We see him as the lion-like Simha Guru. But what it actually means when Srila Prabhupada says, I learned how to love from him. Srila Sarasvati Thakur was intense. And he intensely desired that everyone he came in contact with, and indeed the whole universe, embrace his mood of unwavering dedication to Krishna. His personality was enthused with the utter rejection of anything smacking of worldliness. And because of his insistence that others similarly abandon all attachments and fully surrender to Krishna, it resembled the attack of an aggressor. So he was often misunderstood by those he sought to help. His very presence inspired awe. His glance was so powerful and penetrating that very few could bear it. His every movement and gesture expressed extraordinary inner strength. Dynamic, resolute, and compelling, Srila Sarasvati Thakur was determined to give Krishna to a world that was unenthusiastic to receive him. He optimistically embarked on projects that in ordinary estimation seemed unachievable, and persevered until he realized them. For him, the word impossible did not exist, and upon receiving an order from him, no disciple considered pleading impossible. Indeed, his disciples regarded Srila Sarasvati Thakur as empowered with transcendental potency for overcoming the multiple hurdles that unceasingly arose. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's legendary, powerful personality defied the thought that bhakti was for a weakling. Yet despite his hard exterior, he was so extraordinarily humble that he often described himself as a fallen soul and would request blessings from his disciples or even from common people. He would join his palms together and say, "Dasosmi," I am a servant, to whoever approached him, even before they would offer him any respect. No one was allowed to touch his feet, not even young boys. Whenever anyone tried to do so, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would stretch out his long arms to restrain him, saying, "Dasosmi." He prohibited even his initiated disciples from touching his feet. Srila Saraswati remembered the names of all of his disciples and everyone he had ever met. I think somewhere it is mentioned he had close to 5,000 disciples as well. Imagine remembering the name of every single disciple that you've met. And often when returning to a place after a long time, he would ask for someone by name he had previously met. He inherited the urge to preach from his father, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He was energized by his father's vision of pure bhakti diffusing throughout the globe. He had an unrelenting drive to deliver Shuddha Bhakti to all living entities and the universe, and even those beyond. He wanted to capture the whole territory of Maya and convert it to Krishna consciousness. He could not tolerate that there be any place devoid of Krishna Bhakti. Not restricted within the cultural horizon of Bengal, he wanted to annihilate misconceptions at all levels, in all cultures of human society, and implement full-fledged theism everywhere. Even though seemingly impossible, he took it as his duty to spread Shuddha Bhakti by all means and at any cost. To establish Lord Chaitanya's mission, the ideals of caste, ritual, and all pre-existing stereotypes would have to be demolished. Hence, he inevitably became a revolutionary. He committed himself to a lifetime struggle against the status quo, and for him, preaching meant fighting. Srila Sarasvati Thakur lived for the truth, and like a valiant warrior, never hesitated to attack the manifestations of falsity. He personified the spirit of the Srimad Bhagavatam by insisting that the highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. When speaking on the absolute truth, he said, "Do not try to discover the nature of the truth by the exercise of your imagination. Do not endeavor to attain the truth through an experience of this world. Do not manufacture the truth in order to satisfy yourself or accept anything for the reason that it makes you happy. Do not regard as truth anything that has been built up by others or has the support of the majority of the world like yourself. According to the scriptures, there is hardly one person who will really worship the truth in total. One has to approach the truth in the spirit of absolute submission. Everyone is eager for adoration by others, not for the absolute truth. Those who make a show of being preachers do not just disturb mankind, but everyone's mentality while protecting their own existence. Pure items are very rare and not easily attainable, and so are not very much appreciated. Similarly, there is no respect for those who do not misguide people, but are busy trying through the Sankirtan mission to turn them towards the Lord. Real devotees do not speak to satisfy the audience. They do not cheat people. Rather, pure devotees reveal the defects of cheaters who love to compromise. Only fortunate persons learn to be cautious after hearing the words of saints. Srila Sarasvati Thakur refused to be molded by popular demand into a stereotype sadhu. Nearly everyone who approaches a sadhu seeks peace, reassurance, and relief from the bruises of life, expecting blessings for solving their material problems and to facilitate their sense indulgence. Such people do not expect a sadhu to force his way into their world and reveal their life to be in need of wholesale reform. But Srila Sarasvati Thakur was a different grade of sadhu. Like a lotus who lives in water but remains above it, he moved in human society but was unaffected by it. He considered it his responsibility as a sadhu to slash others' misconceptions. Although persons who led serene lives of study and prayer cannot be compared devotees who go out to confront the all-opposing elements and fight for Krishna. And just one last thing I'll read is on his understanding of Yukta Vairagya. Yukta Vairagya essentially means just engaging everything there is in the world in the service of the Lord, right? And this is something that is stressed by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He reasoned, that is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, if everything is the Supreme Lord's energy, then why should anything be rejected? If God is good, then his energy is also good. Will not the master of unlimited universe accord some of his estate for the use of his servants? His genuine servants are they who understand that temporary items should not be used for sense enjoyment, but can and should be used solely for the service of the Lord. And we know of his example, right? You would think a sannyasi is a renunciate, an austere person. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta in his time wore British overcoats. He dressed like a gentleman. He wore shoes. He traveled in a convertible in Mayapur, right? The Gaudiya Math had elephants and camels and boats. They had the most opulent temples for deity worship because he said, we all live in such opulent houses. Shouldn't the house of the Lord be the most opulent? Right? He used anything and everything that there was for the Lord's servant. He invited the governor of Bengal to Mayapur once. The governor wanted cigarettes. He bought the cigarettes. Right? And we know famously he told his disciples, if there's no vegetables, if you have to eat meat, but you don't come back from your preaching, you don't give up, you do whatever it is you have to do to preach the message of Lord Chaitanya. I'm not saying we should now go and buy one or two Lucy's and, take up that practice again. But see his thinking, that absolutely nothing for himself, anything and everything, whatever it takes to spread the message of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission, right? And as Srila Prabhupada was saying, we come back to that. An acharya who comes for the service of the Lord cannot be expected to conform to a stereotype, for he must find the ways and means by which Krishna consciousness may be spread. And that's what he did. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is very famous for these theistic exhibitions, these cultural fairs that we have. He would put all of these fairs on in different cities. The government would loan him all of these, artifacts from the museum. He would display them. Then he would have these dioramas from all of the pastimes of the Lord, and all of his disciples would be like tour guides, taking people around this exhibition. And this exhibition, it would have sporting competitions. There'd be ice Stedfords and boxing matches and karate, and he had all of this so people could come. And in some way, they could see what Lord Chaitanya's mission was all about, right? And that is the mood that Srila Prabhupada carried and has passed on to us. So this is our inheritance from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, that however you can, whatever it is you can do, be innovative, be different, but get the message of Lord Chaitanya out in a way that is suitable for the social context of your time. And why did Srila Bhaktisiddhanta do what he did? Because he knew at that time when he was preaching, the way to be taken seriously was to get the attention of the West. Right? India was going in that direction. They had slowly started to follow the West. And he knew that if there's something that's going to make a difference, it's to get the regard of the West. So that's why he would preach with the British Raj. When there were events at the Gaudiya Math, he would invite them to come. One of the Gaudiya Math in Calcutta was very near the Ganges. So they had a boat, and he would invite all of these politicians and take them on a boat ride on the Ganges. But he would preach to them on the boat ride. All of these things. And Srila Prabhupada's example shows us that just take shelter of the instruction and the mood of his spiritual master. You don't need anything else. Because if we look at Srila Prabhupada's own example, he was not a senior disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta by any means. He waited, I think, 13 years for initiation. He was a householder, Abhay Babu, he was a pharmacist who would come in the evenings and give a class and lead a kirtan. He never lived in any Gaudiya Math initially. He was not, he didn't have much direct association with his spiritual master. But look what he did. And that's why when ISKCON took off, many of his godbrothers were surprised. Because who was Abhay Babu? No one really, in the height of the Gaudiya Math. He wasn't a manager or anything like that. But simply, the instruction he followed to the T. And he often would say that, if I am successful, it's because I have taken the order of my spiritual master as my life and soul. My Guru Maharaj has told me to write and distribute literature, so I am following that. And I cannot say what the result will be, Meaning, I don't know what's going to happen, but my Guru has asked me to do this, so I will do this. And Srila Prabhupada emphasizes that, Guru Mukha Padma Vakya, Chitete Korya Aikya. Just take the instruction seriously and sincerely. And that is the only secret there is to spiritual life. I will just conclude with this memory. It's a memory of one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples. I've been watching the memory series. It was actually Dinabandhu Prabhu, and he was sharing this memory. There was a disciple of Prabhupada called Kartikeya, and Kartikeya was Srila Prabhupada's cook at some point. But he was a very sensitive person. He would take things very, very personally, so you had to be very careful in how you dealt with him. So he was cooking for Srila Prabhupada, and I forget where Srila Prabhupada was, but it was a little cold. So when it was cold, Srila Prabhupada would like to eat halava, because it would warm him up. And we know halava is made with semolina. So Kartikeya would always make this halava. And one day someone came to the temple and they brought wheat germ. Wheat germ is a different type of grain. It's not semolina. It kind of looks similar, but it's not the same. So Kartikeya is looking at this and he thought, okay, maybe I'll try and make halava with this. It kind of has the same consistency. Let's see. I'm sure Prabhupada will really like this. It's cold and he likes halava, so let me try. So he makes a big pot of halava and he brings it to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada just looks at this and he says, what is this? He says, it's halava. It's like, this is not halava. Just take it away. And Prabhupada does this, but with his left hand. So, in Indian culture, anything with the left hand is not good. It's rejected. So with his left hand, like, take it away. And Kartikeya, poor sensitive Kartikeya, he's so affected because he just wanted to make some halava for Prabhupada. He takes the pot and he's crying and crying and crying. And in the temple room, there was a picture of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So he goes in front of the picture and he sits there and he's crying in front of the picture of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And he's talking to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and he's saying, I just wanted to please your disciple. I know he likes halava and I just wanted to do something for him. I'm sorry that I offended him. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. I just wanted to please my spiritual master. I just wanted to please your disciple. And while he's crying in this way, suddenly he hears, Kartikeya, Kartikeya. Prabhupada is calling him. And then he gets up and he's confused and he wipes his face. And he says, yes, Prabhupada, bring the halava. And he brings the pot of halava and Prabhupada looks at it and he eats. And he eats a bite and he eats another bite and then he finishes the whole pot. So we can understand when Prabhupada says, how the grandfather is more merciful than the father. How for us, Srila Prabhupada is more merciful than our spiritual master. How for his disciples, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is more merciful. But we should also understand how as you go up our lineage, up our history, it's more and more merciful, right? More and more and more merciful because, I'm not saying this in some egotistical way, but in some very small way, we are here today because we are the answer to their prayers, to their benedictions, to their prophecies. Srila Bhaktivinoda, at his house, he looked across the Ganga and he said that one day there will be a beautiful temple. And I pray that the Africans, the Russians, the Americans, the Europeans will dance together in Lord Chaitanya's mission. And in some small way, we are that answer to their prayers. So as we go up and up and up our lineage, it's more and more and more merciful. The Goswamis sat under a different tree. They wrote for us. Srila Bhaktivinoda wrote for us to establish bhakti in the modern world for us. So on this day, we should pray to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta because, if he could get Prabhupada to eat the whole pot of halava, what will he do for us? And every day, actually, we should offer our obeisances to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati because where would we be if he did not establish the Gaudiya Math, that unified preaching mission? Because before the Gaudiya Math, there was nothing. There was no ISKCON, there was no unified preaching mission, there was no Gaudiya community. There was one person, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, sitting in his little hut in Navadvip in Chandrasekhar Bhavan, chanting 1 billion names. Why did he chant? He chanted for us, those of us who are coming and will continue to come. He chanted so he could preach and establish something for us. So yes, him, every single day we should offer our respects to him, because it's his inspiration that drove Srila Prabhupada to do what he did. And not just Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, the whole parampara on our altar actually. From our entire lineage, they have the most mercy for us. So we should pray every day to them that, may I be the answer to what it is you are praying for. Thank you. I will stop there. We've gone over time. Is there anyone, though, who'd like to make a comment or add some glorification or anything? Yes. No. The question is, does the Gaudiya Math have an acharya at the moment? No. After Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disappearance, the senior disciples started fighting over that position, and it got very ugly. It went to court, and it broke up. So now everyone has their own individual Gaudiya Math. So like if you go to Navadvip, just on the main road, how many Gaudiya Maths are there? The Sarasvati Gaudiya Math, the Chaitanya Gaudiya Math, the Gopinath Gaudiya Math. So everyone broke and became the acharya of their own. But what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wanted was the unified Gaudiya Math that was managed by the governing body commission. But yeah, there's no singular acharya at this point. And I think he did that on purpose. He didn't name one. What he did, I know, is establish or mention certain senior disciples who were senior in certain things. Like this is the most shastric, so when it comes to the editing and things, you go to him. When it comes to preaching, he's been the most, so you go to him, things like that. But no, there's no singular acharya. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Bol.